Hey everyone, I'm Evangeline here at Etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about these Glacier Chain cable tire chains. I'll show you how to install them on your 2025 Ram 1500, and we're also going to discuss the features of these tire chains or cable chains, why you might prefer them, or what other options you might have depending on the weather you're expecting. Now, first things first though, the tire size we have here today is size 275/65R18. Double check your tire size because there's different options for the Ram 1500, and we want to make sure that you get the correct chains for you. Cable chains are not usually my first recommendation for chains, but they have their own special place here in this world, and that is if you really need the Class S or very low profile chains because you're concerned about some components about your tire. Here on our specific Ram 1500, I didn't see any issue there, but every truck is different. Another reason you might prefer these is maybe your local dealership recommends only using cable chains, or your local resort prefers the on-road application of these chains, and they may not trust larger, bulkier chains. They want the rollers, they want the cables. So if that is the case for you, and if you're not expecting super heavy duty ice and a lot of snow, but just a little bit where you need that little extra traction, let's keep talking about these rollers. These rollers are going to be individual pieces made of hardened low carbon steel. So the steel is pretty strong, but is prone to corrosion. So if you're expecting to use this for more than one season, I do recommend really trying your hardest to dry these out and store them in a spot that will protect them during your off season. Now, these rollers go around these cables, and the cables are also made of steel, but are going to be a bit more durable. Great for if you need that extra traction on the road. These will work to break into the snow, but also prevent snow from building up on your chains. You can see that they are very low profile, meaning they don't take up much room, especially above your tire and around the wall, and that's going to be good for those low profile situations. These are ladder pattern cables, meaning they go across your tire like a traditional tire chain, but compared to traditional chains, which have a really heavy ba-bump on the road, these are going to be a lot more subtle. Now on the other side though, if you are driving around and conditions aren't that bad, you may get a slight roller skating effect. It's still going to be fun because you have these openings around your tire. These are going to be traction aid devices, but just be mindful about your actual weather conditions. Also on that note, they are designed to be used when you're driving at safe and cautious speeds, so double check your local area and see what they require. Sometimes if you check your owner's manual, they'll have different specifications for snow tire chains, traction aids, things like that. So sticking with a Class S chain like this is usually your best bet, even when a vehicle may not recommend chains, but maybe your local area, like certain mountain passes, require that you have tire chains in order to proceed. So with that in mind, we have this installed on the rear tire as per the owner's manual, but double check yours to make sure you have them in the right spot. Now your tire chains do arrive as a set of two, one for the driver's side, one for the passenger side. They do arrive in this canvas bag. I have mixed feelings about this bag. This bag is really helpful because it's compact, it's lightweight, it's easy to throw into the cab right before the trip, especially if I'm not planning on using the chains, but I want them there in case of emergency. But whenever I have to put the chains right back in, this is a pretty small bag, and the risk of tearing in the bag is pretty high. So if that's the case for you, what I've seen a lot of people do is they get the larger plastic totes, they fill that with lubricant, so after they dry off their chains, they put that in there, and that's how they store their chains, especially during the off season. If you want to go that route, some other things I do recommend taking a look at to adding to your chain bag is some rubber tensioners We'll talk about these during the installation part of this video, but also grab some gloves. That way you're not touching the bare metal with your bare hands and you have a little bit of protection there. You can add that to your emergency tire chain kit if you want. So having that bag there just as an emergency chain is helpful when you add those extra things too. So personal thoughts about these cable chains is I do like the rollers, especially when you compare the Glacier chains with the Titan chain cable chains. The rollers here really help reduce the risk of snow clumping up on the chain because they just have more surface area. The downside to this though is it really doesn't provide that much traction if you're expecting a lot of ice or if you're in rockier conditions, just because rocks and harder things like that have the potential of breaking off those rollers. So definitely not for off-road use. We have low profile actual chains that might be better for that situation. One example is the Titan chain diamond pattern snow tire chain. That one's going to be diamond pattern, offers more coverage, and also it's really easy to install and still pretty affordable. Now, another thing that I've seen with these Glacier cable chains is that you do have to be careful with that lever. That's why I like to use tensioners, because in case I do hit a rock and that lever pops off, I'm then able to trust in the tensioner to keep everything contained. There's also going to be metal components around this tire chain that may potentially come in contact with the sidewall of your tire. So for extended use, probably not the best chain to have on there. But since it's so lightweight, it's so compact, and it's so easy to just toss into your cab before your trip, this is still going to be better than having no tire chain whatsoever, especially with how low profile it is. It does help when you have just those situations where there's a little bit more snow than you usually feel comfortable driving in. Now, the installation process is pretty simple, so if you're curious about that, let's go take a look. What I recommend doing is pretty much the moment your tire chains arrive, just take them out of the box, double check them, lay it out on the garage floor, and just practice putting it on at your truck. That way you're familiar with the process before you're stranded on the side of the road. This is also a good time to double check and to just dry fit it to make sure you know for sure that it fits your specific tire. Now with that in mind, this is how it all looks. Everything looks good, no rust spots. I have it facing the right way. We have our lever on the outside, and we also have the hooks facing up. That'll be a very subtle thing to look for, but if you look at the chain, you'll see that there's gonna be a hook side, and then there's gonna be a flat side. You want that flat side on the tire and the hook away from the tire. So if everything looks good, you're now ready to install your chain. What I like to do when testing it out just here in the garage is to grab the chain from the center, lift it up and over the tire. Again, and making sure that that lever is on the outside and that everything is pretty even, because now we're gonna go towards the back and make our first connection. Everything looks pretty good back here. This is a good time to just note if there's any clearance issues with brake lines, things like that behind your tire. In our case, all looks clear. We're then going to attach this cable into this hook. So you're gonna pull it tight to make sure it's secure. You could go to the third or the fourth notch even. You can always just go back and forth in case you need more or less tension. Now if you have a lot more excess cable though, you also have these little hooks here that can help secure them so they're not flying around as you drive around. Now let's go back to the front and make our next connection. At the front, I like to pull the chain as much as I can just to make sure I really get all that chain out. Actually, I had to go back in and loosen that back cable to like the first or the second notch because I needed a bit more space up front. So you can see here up front, as we make our next connection, we have a similar looking cable, and we have an interesting looking lever. So we're gonna get that cable in to that lever, as much as we can get it right there. And then we're going to pull this over so you can see how it pulls tight on the rest of the tire chain. And now we're going to secure this to the tire chain itself. Once that's secure, and you'll need to make sure it doesn't pop out like that. There we go. Give everything a good tug. Everything's in place. Some things to look out for is to make sure that that hoop is inside the side wall of your tire. And now I'm going to add an extra step here just to make sure everything is actually secure. That's going to be rubber tensioners like these. Now, they're available in different sizes from different brands. Just make sure to get one that's designed for trucks because they're going to be a bit larger. And then you're then going to attach these rubber tensioners to your tire chain. The reason I like to add this, which is, by the way, not included with your chain, but it is sold separately, is because as you drive around, things may shift around too. And having rubber tensioners like these mean that they will shift with your chain and make sure you always have the tightest fit. So just like that, that's what it's going to look like with that separate rubber tensioner. You're going to repeat this process on the other side of your truck. Afterwards, especially if you are installing this in the snow, I recommend rolling forward or backwards a couple of feet and then double checking that everything is still in place before you drive off and away. If everything looks good, then that's going to be about it. That's how you install your Glacier Chain cable tire chains on your 2025 Ram 1500.